I got tiles to make a tower. Gonna talk for a damn hour. And pour a bunch of beer, mama. Ding, just be free. Greetings, programs. Hankerin Fernale here, your old buddy with Drunkards and Dragons, another awesome episode. Greetings, programs. Drunkards and Dragons here with another awesome episode. How to play D&D like a big old badass. Well, we're at it again, and this time we're going to get back into key mechanics. We're back here by our wonderful virtual fireplace. It gets dark now at about 2 in the afternoon, so it seemed only appropriate to have another fireside chat. But this one's got deep cuts on the content because we're going to get into a viewer request, which was, yo, Hankerin, I like that key mechanics crap you're doing, which still baffles the mind why you guys like anything that I'm doing, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Dear Hankerin, as an idea for your key mechanics series, do you have any ideas, specific ideas that involve mechanics which would be suitable to or appropriate for specific settings in the Forgotten Realms? Illustrated guide to tanks. You're gonna want that. Biome. What the hell's a biome, you ask? Isn't that like a little white dot that grows on your strawberries when you leave them on the counter too long? No, that is biomass. A biome is a term that is used for a single thematically unified environment set. So I think for the sake of this video, let's think in 3 biomes. And we'll keep them easy because everybody seems to do them. 1, the Underdark. 2, the bogs or the forests. You could probably just call it forest. And 3, snow and ice. Now there are any number of environments in Forgotten Realms, as well as Greyhawk, as well as other places. Well, Dark Sun has no snow. But other than that, there's a lot of these kinds of places to think about. So apply these as you need. Use your DM's discretion. Let's do the coolest one first, which is snow and ice. Now, everybody loves cool snow and ice campaigns, especially for high-level characters. For some reason, snow and ice and frost giants and like remoras and I don't know, like giant ice worm things, or is that a remoras? Also, like, you know, frozen versions of skeleton warriors, like a white dragon with ice powers, you know, gelatinous cubes frozen solid that are near like some kind of a forge heat trap that warms them up and thaws them, and they're in these giant stacks. It's kind of crazy shit, I don't know. Or maybe there's a rack when you twist it, like a bunch of gelatinous cubes fly out. Like, that's a terrible idea, by the way. Anyways, frozen biomes make great settings for high-level players for reasons I'm not entirely sure, but for some reason the frozen environment is real easy for the DM to wrap his or her head around how to make things a real ordeal. I think it's because cold and frozenness are difficulties that are really easy to relate to. Now, stuff like madness, despair, and fear, and other elements of the Underdark can be very esoteric to a normal person who does not live in a world of high adventure. So even to role play, or even sort of tactically role play the results of, you know, failing a madness save or something like that can be a little bit baffling to a player. But if you fail a save on freezing solid or slippery footing or something like that, it makes a ton of sense. So what are the exact mechanics? Quit talking about generalities, Hankerin. It's not useful. We all have a million generalities coming out our butts. Well, I got one thing coming out my butt: specificity. So, you're talking about a frozen biome. Now, I'm not sure why I have my playboard in front of me, or just this little round tower board, but it always helps me think. I've got my little frost giant here, and got my little dwarf with a white beard, and then I got a couple players coming in here, an archer and a wizard, and they're like, oh my god, it's so cold in here. So, for the frozen biome, my suggestion is create a single mechanic for your frozen dungeon or frozen outdoor encounter, and just hammer the shit out of the single mechanic. I can't remember what movie it's from. Maybe it's Forrest Gump. He's like, what's life about? And like Morgan Freeman or someone is like, one thing. And he's like, okay, great. Well, what's the one thing? And he's like, no, seriously, like one thing. Make it about one thing. Focus on a single thing. Not the box of chocolates thing. A single thing. Pursuant to the style that we've been learning from Dungeon World, which is to build some of the narrative of how you want your game to feel into your DM's notes, give your one mechanic a dope name. So for the sake of this, we're imagining this frozen tower. There is this frost giant over here with his 2 undead icelings, and our heroes enter from above down these stairs, and right when they reach the bottom of the stairs or even on the stairs, they encounter, let's say, one of 2 mechanics that I would suggest. The first one would be called Frozen Solid. Write down the snazzy name in your journal. So you write down Frozen Solid. Those who enter the tower chamber are in danger of being frozen solid. So what does it mean to be frozen solid? Well, you can intuit the results here, is that if you slow down, you stop moving, you actually become incapable of movement. And it's so cold in here actually that every round you're in here, the threat of being frozen solid increases. How do you do that? Okay, as your DM, take your frozen solid dice. Now, if I was cool, it's blue. Okay, so I've got my blue D6 frozen solid dice. So I don't use this as a variable, I use it as a counter. So the minute they enter, and I've got this cool little central location here, I put this on 1. I am gonna add 1 to the room DC. There we go. I don't know if you can see it, but this is my little DC 13 room tag here. Okay, so we've got a DC 13 room of frozen ice. So, on the first round of movement, not only do the players get to take their turns, they need to beat a 13 plus my frozen solid dice, a 14 on their constitution check to be unaffected by the extreme cold. A round of turns goes by, I click this bad boy up to a 2. You can already see how crazy this is gonna get. So, let's say these are low-level characters. The 13 would be insane. By the time I max this out, I'm at a 19 for them to con save or be frozen solid. Do frozen solid in detail. Well, you could do it like a death save, where if you miss 3 saves on being frozen solid, you actually just freaking go.
Hello?
Full on ice statue mode. Like you're incapacitated, you're unconscious, like somebody's gonna have to drag you out of there on like a refrigerator dolly. It's bad. The ice mechanic that I'm proposing is coated with ice. So you write down in your journal, in this room, those who enter are in danger of falling on their asses because the entire room is coated with ice. So if you were writing a Dungeon World encounter, you would say, when players move fast despite the terrible footing, they realize the room is coated in ice and have to save from falling down or running into spikes on the wall or whatever. So if you want to be a real troll, make a room that's coated with ice, super slippery, and then there's spiked walls all around. The coated with ice effect is basically going to be a tool you want to use to keep players moving super slow. But there's something more fun about the coated with ice rule. So on the one hand, sure, it can get players to move a lot like they're on a minefield, right? So they're coming in the stairs and they're making dex checks just to get down a stair. If they go into dash mode, they slip, go prone, and slide until they hit a surface. Right? If they move normally and fail their save, they simply slide upright into a surface. When the players look down and investigate this coating of ice, they realize it is highly polished. It's like an ice rink, right after the Zamboni got done. So this is where your time to play comes in. So instead of your normal frost giant, let's just say that you have these 2 sort of animated statues. So their feet and legs are all frozen into the floor, but their upper bodies are kind of like, but it's clear they've just been here way too long to move. Then what you do is use some other threat, like, I don't know, ice weasels that are running around, so you spawn 2d6 ice weasels. The players are trying to deal with the ice weasels and begin moving into the room, and this is where you basically start wanting them to fail saves and slide until they hit objects. So you want to, boink, you're moving them around like Breakout style, if you guys remember that old game. So it's like they're going boop, 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 right? So each move, now when they save, they don't unwittingly go into the melee range of the statues. But when they don't save, they slide like a hockey puck right over into these guys, and they grab them and start beating on them and stuff like that. Enough of that. Let's imagine now that this is the forest, okay?
Hello?
It's a forest, because there's trees. Alright, so same thing, it's a biome. How do you portray the biome with mechanics? Again, focus in on one thing. So don't try to cover all the vast and different possibilities and interestingnesses that can happen in a swamp or a forest. For each encounter, or each space, or each blob of gameplay, however you divide it up, just focus in on one thing and keep it coming, because it'll have much more tangible effects. The tangling vines are the first one that comes to mind that's just always useful and always familiar to players. So in your DM's guide, though, remember, you're going to write down something with a bunch of flavor. So it says like, the terrible thorned vines of frogwood, something like that. Or terrible creeping vines. There you go. So what are terrible creeping vines? Well, I need to take my pair of archers here. They're going on a hunting trip. And they find this weird table, and as they walk up to it, they have a chance of becoming embroiled in the terrible creeping vines. So these things are all over the floor. They're coming out of, especially coming out of, masses of plant matter. So any 2 squares, anytime you're within 2 squares of one of these sort of bushes, the chances of becoming entangled by the terrible creeping vines is maximized. So what? Hankerin Fernell, that's like the most boring mechanic I've ever heard. Maybe so. But the way that you need to spin being able to stop player movement in their tracks. So this is different than being frozen. This is save against these vines, and if you don't, they wrap all around your legs, do 1d4 damage, some small amount of damage from all the thorns that are digging into you, and then require like 12 points of damage to hack your way out. So you are just stuck. Now if you're an archer, maybe this isn't working against you, but here's the key. Let's change these 2 characters from archers into a wizard and a dwarf fighter, and put our archers right up here. Now, to really make it interesting, need a piece of cover. Okay, now you've got something. Now you've got a forest mechanic. So, as long as I'm back here, I'm immune to the archers. Maybe they're unleashing like hails of arrows too. They're just like, get out of here, this is our freaking backyard, you jerk adventurers always coming through here looking for kobolds. And so you get back here, you're behind the rock, you can't be shot at, and you can cast the Simsalabim, do the mind control or whatever, and the dwarf can just walk up here and take 20 arrows in the face before he starts jumping at their heels. But if he is right here, let's say, he's got 2 saves against terrible creeping vines. This guy comes around, he's got a save against the creeping vines. And then they are stuck out in the open, unable to move, being peppered with arrows. Now maybe you also put these guys, way up here where they can't be reached. So the whole mechanic of the room is actually to move through the room without being pinned in place and peppered with arrows. Your 2, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the archers, they come into the forest. There is a baffling tangle of tree trunks, bushes, and broken rocks, and it is very difficult to comprehend the way through this space in the gloom of the woods. So what I would do is each move that a character has, he's got to make an intelligence save or wisdom save to translate the path that you could move through this space. And here's a great chance to reward like wilderness lore or nature lore or tracking. Those rolls can bypass the problem, but for other characters, they move, they make the roll, they fail the roll, and they actually move this way. Now, how do you prevent from just walking them into landmines and stuff? Use the old 1d6 direction dice. So straight away from you is 1, and then go clockwise. It's It's really easy. Especially when you do this a lot, you'll get used to exactly where on the clock the D6 roll is. So D6 is basically 10 o'clock-ish. So in this case, he would have walked like right back to the edge of the map. Okay, second player moves forward, again misses the save, gets a 5. That's about 8 o'clock. Goes that direction. So what you do is you get these baffled, confused, frustrated players who are just trying to move forward, but they keep taking little wrong turns around rocks and going around bushes the wrong way, and they're having a hell of a time. Now, if meanwhile you have a creature such as this woodland, if you really want to add an element of hell to it, put a forest fire behind them so that you give your room a timer. So they're not allowed to just kind of wait out their confusion. They need to constantly be going, I think it's over, no, I think it's over here. No wait, it's over here. Oh wait, I already checked over there. I think it's over here. No wait, maybe it's back here by the bush. Hey, I think I found a way through. So on and so forth. So the maddening nature of a dense forest. And how do you really make it interesting? Well, you follow the 3 golden T's, which is your threat, your timer, and your treat. So they're always working towards something that can help them. They're always fleeing from something that's going to hurt them. And something is giving it all imminence. You know, the oldest one in the book is the room is flooding. But you can put a fire behind them. There's a swarm of insects. There's an implacable enemy like an army coming. There's an earthquake splitting the earth in half. This tower is falling. You know, all kinds of crazy shit. The timers are usually one of the funnest things in any given map. But then you use your biome mechanic to slow, begoggle, and bewilder your players. I'm begoggled. The Underdark is a subterranean wilderness. And parts of it are hewn and dungeon-like, but vast stretches of it are natural rock formations, tunnels, and other chambers that frankly are vile to human consciousness because it's just such an other world. It makes no sense to the mind. And that's why a lot of times with the Underdark, you'll get rolls for madness, despair, and the other stuff. So if you guys are playing Out of the Abyss and battling Jubilex and all these guys, Mr. Funny Hands and all those dudes, you're probably looking for some of these mechanics. My favorite module that invented some of these mechanics or brought them in was definitely Ravenloft. They did a great job just inventing saves that matched their environment. But you don't want to just come up with a simple save. You want environmental mechanics. So this is where we'll push it a little further. So for the Underdark, we'll do 2 more ideas. Don't use darkness because really 5th edition in particular is just way overpowered with all the dark vision stuff, and making darkness get so artificial, it's really honestly very difficult to visualize false darkness, and it's very trolly feeling, I think. So my recommendation would be avoid like the temptation to do like, it's pitch black, you can't see a damn thing. Oh, well, I guess I'll walk into a wall then. So here's our guys in the Underdark. So I think the fun thing to try with the Underdark is definitely madness. How are you going to do it? That's going to be our first one. So you can call it, you can call it the echoing madness of the caves, okay? So every movement that they make, there's this strange footfall echo that goes That's such a weird freaking noise. So I would treat the echoing madness of the caves kind of like a form of death save. So track for your players, or have them track how many times they trigger the echoing madness. Everyone that can hear it has to mark down that they heard it. If you hear it 3 times, you got to save on it, either charisma or wisdom, depending on how you want to play it up. I'd say probably charisma, because madness is something you shake off with force of personality. You fail to save and you go into Howling Madness, and this is where you want to have your 1d8 table of Underdark Madness effects ready to go. Now, if you don't want to make that table, just look up the 1d8 table for Confusing Gaze on the Umber Hulk. Really useful. Gives you some kind of paralyzed with fear, run a random direction, or like stab your friend in the most extreme version. What does this do for the characters if they're entering a combat or trap evasion situation? Well, shit, it makes you want to move without sound. And that is one of the coolest things in the Underdark. If you just use oh, well, there's 5 kobolds up ahead, and if you guys make any noise, they're probably going to attack you. Then the paladin will like walk up and be like, have at thee, heathen, and you'll be like, okay, well, so much for my stealth mechanic. But this mechanic directly threatens their very lives if they make noise, because the echoing madness of the caves. So there's your mechanic, first one for the Underdark. So what you're going to get is these characters creeping silently, creeping, and then somebody drops like a pebble and it goes. Then one kobold guard wanders out here. Hey, what's going on? I wonder what's going on in the Underdark. Dark. He's immune to the echo because he lives here, but they're not. So they hear his voice echo. They have to mark off another one. So then one guy says, well, I'm going to run around with my ears covered. Okay, well, that's fine, but you can't hold your weapon while you do that. So you're unarmed and doing this, and already the situation for madness to break out and make the group go crazy is starting to make a lot of sense. Part of the key, though, to the flavor of the echoing madness of the caves is you've got to do the voice acting or have your phone do it, which is this weird. It's just like what? These echoes. Baffling rearrangement of direction. So if I have, so we could call it. What would be the cool cinematic name that you write down in your book as the DM? It is the baffling Tectonic Underdark. So the Tectonic Underdark is a constantly shifting space. So a great way to illustrate this, let me summon. N rounds. The tectonic forces realign. How do you determine N? With your trusty suspense dice. Here you go, it's blue. Actually, we're in the Underdark now, so we can use green. Okay, so as the combat begins, we have a bunch of spiders pouring out. Do we have spiders handy? Well, here, this white dragon will do. I'm in the Underdark, oh my god. Okay, so he comes out, the combat begins, and I roll my 6. In 6 rounds, and I let the players see me count this down, and they're like, oh god, when he reaches 0, he's probably going to spawn like 300 goblins. When it counts down, I actually remove the players for a moment, and you kind of pull one of these maneuvers. Right? And then with a huge bang and a cloud of dust, the stones all settle. Then I roll my tectonic dice again. For the sake of argument, let's say I roll a 1. And they're like, what? So a round of turns happens. I get into position to fire an arrow. I cower because the breath weapon's coming. Count down to 0. Again, tectonic forces. The player is positioned right here in some kind of ideal firing position, and tectonic runs out of time. This thing moves like a piece of clockwork like this. Right? So you don't just get to go, okay, everybody close your eyes while I scramble the board. You have to move everything mechanically. And this is where having a more loosey-goosey 3D terrain system is going to be your friend, because these things will make a little more sense. If this is all flat, it can be a little weird and not that fun to try to convey this. Okay, so they move, whoa, this is crazy, man, but then time runs out again. Okay, I think you get the point. So the baffling tectonic forces of the Underdark are this particular mechanic. Okay, so key mechanics to use that can match biomes in environments. Quick recap, we got frozen solid, coated in ice, the terrible creeping vines, the baffling tangled woods, and then we have the echoing madness of the caves, and the baffling tectonic forces of the Underdark. My idea is good? Honestly, no, but there is something I am good at, and it is being lazy enough to only want to do one thing, and it really can give your game a lot more character. So that is really the takeaway that I'd like to get into here, is not necessarily, hey, check out my cool ideas, because honestly the world is jam-packed with cool ideas, but more an approach. Especially when you use the discipline of handwriting your journal, you find yourself writing far less. And that is a great discipline for a DM to have. when you're typing and you're getting pages and pages of stuff and like, ooh, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, it can become very big, overwhelming, hard to memorize, and hard to enact when your players are all going crazy and like throwing monkey wrenches in all your plans, which happens every damn time. There's no preparing for it. So if you have simple, committed, singular key mechanics that match your environment, you will be sure that you implement them with tons of punch. So do that thing, because doing that thing is badass, and that's what you're here to do with me. We're going to learn together and figure out something interesting to do with this silly round room. Like, what's in that little door? I don't know. Maybe this whole place is my butt. Not bad. Not bad for the inside of a butt. Okay, guys. Strength, honor, beer, key mechanics that match your environment, and you know you're gonna do a great job. I am an archer, and I'm in a close-up. I'm a two-dimensional frost giant whose dialogue was poorly written, resulting in these non-gamified fictionalizations of my mere existential nature. How dare you proclaim such boring things? I'm going to shoot an arrow at you. Okay, I meant 14 arrows.